Ruslan.
Often when I talk about relationships, when I talk about marriage, when I talk about building a family, specifically from the Christian paradigm, there are some people, sometimes they're from the red pill community, sometimes they're agnostic, they're atheists, and they'll always push back and they'll say, Ruslan, why is the divorce rate so high? And I don't even like using that word. I just find out, I don't like saying that word. Why is it so high? Why is this thing that scripture forbids and Christians claim to have a monopoly on how they do relationship, why is it so high? And on this video, I'm gonna tell you guys exactly why it's so high, and give you some real practical game on how you can prevent and avoid ever being in a situation where that is an option, okay? And you can't control other people, but you can control your own mentality in terms of how you approach relationships. I have found this website, this resource, really interesting, and it's 100 facts about divorce. And I wanna just go over a few of them with you guys. Some of them shocked me, some of them I kinda knew, okay? But here's some interesting statistics about divorce, okay? Almost 50% of all marriages in the United States will end in a divorce or separation. Researchers estimate that 41% of all first marriages end in divorce. Number 9, 60% of second marriages end in divorce. Interesting. That means if you've been divorced once, you're actually statistically more likely to get divorced again. And guess what? If you've been divorced twice, holy moly, 73% of all third marriages end in divorce. Every 13 seconds, there's one divorce in America. Married people who watch PORN may be more likely to divorce. Okay, that's not a big shocker, right? If you are into that sort of thing, it becomes an addiction. You're more likely. Husbands, now this is interesting. And this might hurt for some folks. Okay, husbands who don't work full time may be more likely to get divorced. Okay. So a lot of folks are like, no, we need to dismantle the patriarchy and the gender roles. Well, according to this, it says that husbands who don't work full time are more likely to get divorced. Now this is interesting. This one blew my mind. 52, I don't understand this one. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Women who have more sexual partners before getting married aren't always more likely to get divorced. I don't know if the language there aren't always likely as a caveat, right? The closer a couple is in age, the less likely they are to get divorced. Interesting. This whole list is interesting. I'll provide this in a link description below. But check this one out. Separation doesn't count in terms of divorce statistics. So when the fact is that divorce is actually down historically, but it's because more people are getting separated and not married. Then that's why one of the reasons the statistics are going down, right? 74. I'm sure I talk about this on the channel. If the folks don't want to hear this, cohabitating can impact your risk of divorce. The longer you cohabitate before getting married, the more likely you are to never get married. And after you're married, the more likely you are to get divorced. There's some really interesting information out there about divorce, right? Why is it so high? Why is it so prevalent in our society? Okay, and I have a very simple answer that I think will hopefully make the light bulb come on. I want to point out the reasons for divorce. 32. Lack of commitment is the most common reason given by divorcing couples, according to a recent national survey. Lack of commitment, argue too much, infidelity, marry too young, unrealistic expectations, lack of equality in the relationship, lack of preparation for marriage, domestic violence or abuse. Okay, only 25% is domestic violence or abuse, but you would think that that would be a little bit higher. Okay, why is this so stinking prevalent and how can we change it? I'm gonna go to the scriptures, and some of you guys may not like that, and I'm gonna give you guys a parallel from my own life that I think many of us will relate to, okay? So there's this passage in Proverbs 4 verse 7. It says, the beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom, though it cost all you have, get understanding. Wisdom is different than knowledge. Wisdom is understanding and owning a craft, a skill, a trade. It's a difference between you knowing what music you like and you being able to sit down on a piano and read music and play it. Wisdom in that context is that it's the application of knowing something, right? It's the practical side of knowledge. There's a lot of people that have head knowledge, but there's less people that can take the head knowledge and apply it to their day-to-day life. Okay, now what am I talking about? Let's go to another passage here. Hebrews chapter 5. Okay, so check this out. He says, we will have much to say to you about this, but it is hard to make it clear to you because you no longer try to understand. So he's writing, many people believe the Apostle Paul is writing this church. We don't really know who wrote Hebrews, but people kind of guess it was Paul. He says, you're no longer trying to understand. Okay, in fact, though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you the elementary truths of God's word all over again. You need milk, not solid food. Anyone who lives on milk, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness. But solid food is for the mature who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. By this point, many of you should know how to function as big grown-up Christians who don't need to be on your mommy's boob for your sustenance. You don't need milk. You need meat. What is meat? It's telling us right here. You no longer are trying to understand. In fact, by this time, you ought to be teachers. You need someone to teach you the elementary truths of God's word all over again. You need milk, not solid food. Anyone who lives on meat, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness. The teaching about righteousness. But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. Maturity in the scriptural sense is being able to train yourself constantly to live out righteousness and to distinguish good from evil. What am I talking about? When I was younger, I really wanted to get my license so I could drive. I was a sophomore in high school. And September of my sophomore year in high school, I went and got a job at Pizza Hut. And until this day, Pizza Hut's still my favorite pizza. The stuffed crust, it's fire. And I got a job at Pizza Hut, and I actually lied on my job application. I'm not 15, I'm 16, right? Because I was a sophomore in high school, and I started working earlier than I didn't. This is a descriptive story, not a prescriptive story. Don't lie on a job application, but I did because I wanted to earn some money. Why? So I can get a car. I wanted to get a car. Why? So I could drive around and be mobile and not have to be dependent on my mom or other people or walk or take the bus. So in that process, I started saving money and actually saved up enough money to get myself a car. At 16 years old. It was a 1988 Toyota Celica. Okay, some folks that know me from back in the day know me in this little hatchback. We used to cram people in it. I was able to take people to church, and I got this car, but I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't even have a permit. So what did I have to do? Well, I had to go to school to first get the knowledge of the roads and what it means to drive and all the laws. And then I had to get a certain number of hours behind the wheel, driving with an instructor next to me. And then I had to get more support and have my mom or someone that was over the age of 25 drive with me for my first 6 months, and I wasn't allowed to transport anybody. What am I telling you? That I needed to understand the knowledge it required to function on the roads. I also needed time behind the wheel with an instructor. I then needed to not have anybody else in my car so that I could get my license. I think I was 16 and a half by the time I actually got my license. Up until that point, I had a permit. What am I getting at? Friends, to get married in America, by far the most important decision any of us will ever make is who you decide to say those vows with and who you decide or claim to want to spend the rest of your life with and who you potentially decide to recreate with and reproduce with. The most important decisions. You can go down to the courthouse and just get a piece of paper and now you're married? Think about that for a second. If you want to do anything else in life, anything. You want to be an engineer. You want to be a graphic designer. You want to drive a vehicle. What do you need? You need training. You need time under tension. You need mentorship. You need someone to come alongside of you to help you figure this thing out. Yet with marriage, here you go. You want to be married? Oh, cool. It's a piece of paper. Here you go. And why do we have the divorce rate? I'll tell you why. because more people spend time preparing for their wedding than they do preparing for their marriage. I'll prove it to you. Let's go back to these statistics. Number 54, more lavish weddings may predict less successful marriages. The more time you spend preparing for your wedding and not on your marriage, because you got to get the flowers right and you need the right photographer and you need this and you need that and you need this. Instead, how about you go take a premarital class? Matter of fact, how about you go pay for that premarital class? How about you go ask and pay for a therapist? How about you go and find a mentor couple in your church that's been married for 20 or 30 years and has a healthy, thriving marriage? You could tell they're still in love with each other with the way they interact. We don't spend any time preparing for arguably the most important decision you'll ever make. So let's go back to this reason. Number 32, lack of commitment is the most common reason given by divorced couples according to a recent national survey. Lack of commitment. They argue too much. There's infidelity. They're married too young. Well, if they were in community, they were in a church, they had some people around them, some guardrails around them, a lot of this could have been avoided. Unrealistic expectations. Lack of equality in a relationship. Lack of preparation for marriage. There it is again. It's interesting how so much of this could be alleviated by simply what? Living out this verse right here. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 14. But solid food is for the mature who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. Have you trained yourself to distinguish good from evil? Have you trained yourself to distinguish you making a big spectacle of your wedding and not making the investment into your marriage? Have you trained yourself to distinguish your happiness from your holiness? Because you think it's all about you being happy. God's more concerned about you being holy, living your life set apart. And marriage is a great way to make you holy. And so is having children. I've used this illustration before. I stole it from Paul Washer. Shout out to all the 1,000-point Calvinists. When you get saved, a part of you dies and it's like you go into a tomb. When you get married, it's like another part of you has to die and you go into a deeper tomb. And then when you have children, shout out to all the parents, you know this is a fact, another part of you dies and you have to go into a deeper tomb within the tomb within the tomb. If we were just honest with people about this and we told them, hey, let's spend less time worrying about your wedding and more time worrying about your marriage. Let's get you some of that behind the wheel training. Let me watch you argue. I want to see you argue. I want to see you disagree. How do you disagree? No, that's not how you disagree. Don't do that. Remove those you statements. Start saying I feel statements. Right? I feel like when this happens, it means this. Instead of saying you're wrong and you're an idiot. Hey, get on the same page with your finances. Notice a lot of these disagreements, lack of commitment, a lot of arguing. A lot of the arguing in marriages, they say the number one reason is finances, right? Get your finances in order. Get your house in order. Get your family in order. It's all about the wedding day. Woo! We're going to have a spectacular wedding and it's going to look like a Cinderella story. Everybody thinks they're freaking Beauty and the Beast. This is why we have a high divorce rate. And it's not much different in the church because a lot of y'all attend church very, very, very casually. You don't actually plug into your local congregation. You don't actually build relationships. You don't actually spend time committed to serving people. If you do that and you plan for your marriage, you get prepared, you transition from milk to food. Why? Because you're not just you're going deeper. You're going deeper into the teaching. You're transitioning from just knowledge to application and wisdom. Pray for more wisdom. Pray for more wisdom in your marriage. Pray for more wisdom for your future marriage if you're single. Pray for more wisdom, knowledge applied, something that you know, how to communicate, how to argue, how to fight, how to disagree. I'm not saying this as a one-size-fits-all catch-all. You cannot control other people. Okay, what you can do is set boundaries and parameters and ways to protect yourself and your spouse, but you can't control other people. You can't be a hawk and keep track of everything. There are times where you might be, two people are together and you might be so deceived, you just don't know. So there's always that caveat. But generally speaking, approach your marriage the same way you approach wanting to have your license early. Get some behind the wheel, study for the exam, own that. And what you'll notice is if you can go from, I'm nervous driving, I'm moving this crazy car, to, oh, this car is an extension. That's wisdom. This car is an extension of myself. I know the laws. I know I'm supposed to drive, but the car just feels like you don't even have to think. It becomes, if you could apply that and move that way in your marriage, you'll be fine. It's not going to be peaches. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be right, but you'll be fine. So anyway, hopefully this is making sense. Let me know what y'all think.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Yo, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you found it valuable, consider checking out the links in this description. There is a free How to Study the Bible course, a free Master My Habits course, which I put together with my Christian therapist, and a free Find Your Niche course, as well as some of these other videos recommended from me and YouTube to you. All right, peace.